2025 Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. We're about a month out from our race, and it's time for our first 70.3 edition to our race overview series here this year. So, first up, before we start everything, make sure you like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. If you are interested in any coaching services, please reach out. I'll be happy to assist you, whether that's just a pre-race kind of strategy session for you or some one-on-one individual coaching. And with that, let's get started with our 2025 first 73 race of the Ironman circuit this year for us. Ironman Oceanside, very, very popular race. I'm letting the slide deck kind of roll here on the Ironman website, and this is exactly what you're going to get on race day. You're going to get a lot of really, really cool views, a lot of unique things that you don't normally get on another 70.3 venue here. So really, really cool stuff. Also to note, the athlete guide is not out yet. I would expect that to come out soon, but we are only 4 weeks away and it's still not out yet. So I would expect it to come out in the next week or so. Make sure you're accessing that's kind of a new little landing page that they got here. They got all kinds of links and things like that, facts, all that cool stuff. Make sure you do check out that. This is the last year's athlete guide that we are going to be perusing really, really quickly, so you can kind of get some guidance on what is different this year, what is the same. This is the typical event schedule that you will see out there. Again, this is last year, so I would expect this to kind of stay similar with some minor changes with times, maybe locations, that good stuff. But usually Thursday there's athlete check-in availability for you. There's usually a couple athlete briefings as well. Friday there is an athlete check-in, a mandatory bike check-in, and timing check pickup. And there's optional gear check-in as well. Again, we don't know exactly every step of the equation so far because the athlete guide is not out yet, but it usually stays the same here. It's usually pretty much what you get here. And then also before we skip over, there are usually a couple athlete briefing sessions available for you on the day before as well. Saturday is our moving day. Again, if you are not familiar with what day you are racing on, it is April 5th. All right. Again, this is last year's thing. This is pretty much what you get with athlete breakdown on race day. Transition usually opens around 4:30, 4:45, somewhere in there. There is a pro race again this year, and there is an age group start that happens afterwards, as in years past. This is a big kickoff race, so I would expect them to do a couple unique things out there leading up to the race start. Not sure exactly what they are, but it's usually a very, very fun time out there on race morning. Make sure you are aware of what time transition closes. This race does have some parking logistical things that you need to be aware of and navigate on race morning. It just takes a little bit extra time to kind of do everything and move around on race morning. A lot of athletes do get frustrated here just because of those. It takes a little bit of extra time to go and move around and do things on race morning and in the days leading up to it. So just, take a couple of breaths and just take a step back and, just be ready to race, but don't explode out there. Don't waste that energy. You'll need it. The age group rolling start happens at the pro race here is at 6:40. This last year's I started 10 minutes afterwards. I would expect that to be the same. Mandatory bike and gear, all that good stuff. Awards ceremony usually happens at 4. I would expect that to stay the same. Now we're rolling up. You can read all about the parking and shuttles and all that. This is what it was last year. And we're going to get into the course specifics here because we don't have a lot of answers for the other stuff yet. So there is a change this year. This is last year's swim course. If we do go to our swim here on our swim course, it is different. This is our swim this year. We are starting at a different spot this year. Last year we started back over here, but we are starting over here, and you are going to head out on your race course this way, and you are going to exit exactly where you started. This is it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a little different here. The water is going to be the same temperature. You are going to be shielded a bit more from everything. With that, there is a couple things that you need to know. First off, there is a turn pretty much right at the beginning of the start. That's going to be very, very chaotic, whether you're a pro or an age grouper. The people that are going to have the easiest time navigating this course are the people that are in the back or the really, really advanced swimmers here. Kind of everyone in between is going to be bunched up. It's just going to be busy. I would expect there to be a huge fight for the really, really fast age groupers, and then kind of a lull a little bit. And then as it gets more towards that heavier pack where everyone is kind of situated, that medium ability level, it's gonna be really, really tough to navigate the first little part over here. Another interesting note on this course is this channel right here. It's a little narrow, and if you see at the end of this first arrow right here, that is actually a boat that's going out there. So there's not a whole lot of room to be swimming out there. I would expect there to be a lot of individuals here separating right and left side, so you just don't have the ability to cross over. But nevertheless, just make sure you are aware of what's happening on race morning. Just a kind of another logistical thing to keep track of. So when you start, be ready to race this year. Be ready to race. It's going to be a battle. That first corner is going to be hot, very, very hot. You're going to be battling. You're going to be fighting for position. And this boat is actually a good reference point on the race course. That's obviously not going to be there on race day, but that's probably going to be the point where you can actually start swimming your pace for the majority of people. You know, if you do get in a good little group there and they are pulling you along and you're able to kind of get into some clean water, that is the ideal scenario here. Water is going to be a little bit chillier, so a lot of athletes are going to be going out very, very quickly, and they are not going to notice it. Also, on the other side of the coin, it is going to take some people's breath away, and that is going to actively slow them down in this first little section here, and then they'll actively ramp back up. So make sure you do get a good warm up in before. Make sure you're doing all your good stuff, waiting in the corrals, waiting in line, so you are ready to rock and roll. But once you get to this point here, you continue on, and then you do make a dog leg turn to the left. Just a slight veer, nothing crazy, but that is going to kind of put some people off a little bit. You're going to have people veering out a little bit more. You're going to have people that are right on the line over there. So actively choosing which group to follow will pay huge dividends here, and you're just going to have to be on it from the get-go, pretty much, right? If there's a group of people that is kind of going kind of in between those little two sight lines, I would actually take that group and let them pull you along, because there are going to be lots of people willing to do the work for you, and let them out here. If you do get into a funky situation where you have to kind of put the hammer down, kind of leapfrog from one group to the other, this is an ideal spot to do it. You're still early on in the race. You're not halfway done with the swim yet, so a lot of effort. You can kind of throw a couple of matches in here if needed. This stretch of swim, this stretch of water right here is going to be one of the more challenging bits from an effort level standpoint. This is usually where, I mean, it is about halfway through the swim. And this is the point where most athletes realize, hey, I've gone a little too hard, or I've gone a little too easy. So this is, you kind of get a washing machine effect with effort level. You get a lot of people backing off, a lot of people saying, wow, I went out way too easy, and it's just a weird vibe over here. So during this stretch on both sides, actually, I would encourage you to swim your race. And that way, you're going to find yourself cutting through a lot of the riffraff, right? You're also not going to find yourself really rapidly accelerating and slowing down and accelerating and slowing down. You're really going to maintain that consistency, which we all love as triathletes, through this section here. And you will find yourself cutting through a lot of the riffraff there. Coming back during this section here, this is going to be a very, very critical section. There are going to be, I would imagine, there are going to be people preventing you from doing something like that out there on race day. If not, well, happy days. You can cut the corner a little bit here. But I would expect there to be people pushing you to be on course and stay in there. Otherwise, that is going to be a massive, massive distance cut right there. I would also expect that right through here, because there are a couple of docks located right here. But this section right here is, if you are going to do a surge, that's probably going to be the last realistic spot for you to do it without penalty of effort and cost and all that good stuff. This last section here, this is going to be another busy section. This is going to be where I expect a lot of people to come together again, and a lot of egos to be thrown around here, no matter what level you're at, whether that's the pro all the way to the back of the pack group right here. You are going to be actively squeezed together during this long stretch right here, so make sure you are, if you do have a little cleaner water, right? I wouldn't expect that during this area here. I would expect it to be a little bit busier than you want it to be. And again, just another kind of not a burden, but just annoyance that you are going to have to deal with. Um, After you get out to the transition or the swim exit, you are going to have to make your way to the transition area, and you are probably going to have to loop around a little bit before you go out onto the bike, which is our next topic. So again, scrolling up here, that is the swim change now. If we go back to our athlete guide from last year, you can see if my screen decides to load that this is our bike course here. And this year, pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. This is our, if I could find it, this is our course this year. Something new that they're doing is they are marking this Strava-wise so you can actively go over it and you can see some of the elevation changes. It's pretty similar to if you were just going to go and do something like a ride with GPS, something like that. It's pretty similar here. I do really, really like it. I wasn't a fan of it initially, but I am a fan after being on it for a little while here. For the first little bit of our stretch here, you do have a steady incline, steady grade. So it's going to be more of an annoyance than anything. This is 2-ish miles into our race here, and so you're just going to have to be on it pretty much from the get-go again. So it's a course that demands your ability to just be ready at all times, and the course takes advantage of those people who are not ready, right? If you are ready, you could take advantage of it a little bit, but just be careful out here for this first little stretch. You do have to be on it. Don't overdo it in this section, but this is going to be a higher level area of effort that you want it to be than normal. Then it kind of lulls you to sleep a little bit. You do go back behind the shopping center here. Make sure you are aware of some of those potholes and terrible road areas behind the shopping center. I don't know if they've repaved it. Hopefully they've patched up some of the holes. But if not, that would be an area where I would actively go look and see what you're going to be doing, because usually you have punctures back there and it's just an area where people take it a little bit back there. Once you do head out onto the major courseway, let's call it the circuit out here, you do kind of get lulled into a false sense of security. Again, this is a steady downhill, undulating downhill, right, for the most part. And then you are hit with your first real challenge, your first real hill out here at about, let's call it mile 5. So you have about 5 miles to kind of get in the groove of things, and then it's game on elevation standpoint. First little blip here, you do have about a 4.57% gradient. That's going to be the range that you are going to experience right there. Afterwards, you are sliding through. It's a steady downhill grade-ish. Of course, there's going to be some uphills, obviously. But for the most part, this is a great opportunity for you to recover and keep your speed up. We'll talk about something else that's going to be critical for this area in a second. And then it's up and down a little bit. It's kind of all over the place. This little out and back section here, that is always a fun area. Then you return back to the Oceanside here. You are going to be rolling from about, let's call it mile 25. So 25 miles here, you've had great times. You're right along the ocean. And then from this point on, the real work starts. So for those first 25 miles, you need to have speed, you need to carry it, you need to be on it, you need to watch the groups, all that good stuff, right? But now, for mile 25, things do change a little bit, specifically from an elevation standpoint. Elevation standpoint here, this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. 25 miles in, we do have about, let's call it a 3-ish% grade. We do kick up to about 4.5% at times, and that lasts all the way to about 26 and a half miles here. We are climbing, we maintain that, we are undulating terrain through here. This is going to be an annoying area. This is going to be an area where a lot of athletes really, really want to put the power down and unfortunately pay the price just right at this point here, because we do kick up again, and this hill again, it's nothing crazy. It's nothing that you're going to really remember and stand out and say, wow, that place was really, really challenging. But I'm here to tell you this is going to be one of the more challenging bits that sets you up for success or failure if you're not ready. Make sure you are, of course, actively fueling, nutrition, all that good stuff leading up to this point. After mile 29, you do have a little bit of a downhill before you get met with the second real challenge out on course here. At mile 30, it does kick up, and you can see the grade that you are experiencing. That is not a lie. That is 12-ish% of elevation grade right there. You will feel that. This is going to be one of the main areas why people have bigger gears, bigger cassettes, all that good stuff, bigger chain rings or smaller chain rings to match this hill profile here. Afterwards, you do get greeted with a great little downhill. You are going to have to make a sharp left-hand turn here, and then this is going to be the other real challenge out on course here. From mile 32 all the way up to about 38.3. That is the biggest challenge and the one that everyone's going to be talking about. As we're going over here on our cursor, you can see that the elevation grade is not super aggressive until you get later on into the hill itself. But from mile 32 to 35, 36, elevation incline is pretty manageable. Most people might find themselves an arrow. Faster people are definitely going to find themselves an arrow here. And it's when you look at it on the map, on the elevation map here, it's kind of scary. It kind of puts some people off. Just don't let that eat at you. And I would encourage you to actually drive this route or portions of it that you can, and you'll see what I mean when you're out there. But as you get further and further into the climb, then it starts to get steeper and steeper, and you are going to experience those steeper elevation grades that everyone's warned you about. This little section right here, this is a challenging section because you want it to be a downhill, and it's not. But again, it will be over very, very quickly before you know it, and then you do actually have a downhill. One last bigger hill here, and you are going to see elevation grades right here. It's about 8-ish% at the steepest spot here. I would expect places of 10 for a couple of seconds, and then this last section here is the real last section of elevation challenge. After that, we are greeted with a nice steady downhill, except for the small little hill right there, but nothing to write home about. And that's our bike course kind of in a nutshell. I alluded to something that we were going to talk about in the first couple of miles here, and I want you guys to watch the biker down in here as I go over the course. You can see what the wind is going to be doing to you. As is typical, usual, it's not always going to be the case, but this is typically what you can find on race day. As you are going along the water, and I'll just get you there to this point here. As you're going along the water and you're on the circuit, you are going to be experiencing, or usually experiencing, a headwind or a cross headwind. You can take it to the bank. You are going to experience a good chunk of time having a headwind out here. And it is what it is. That's why aero is going to be even more of a priority here, and why you can kind of get out of the aero position with less penalty later on, just because you've been in it for so long. You have to get out anyways. It's kind of it's exactly what you need when you encounter it later in the race. But as you progress through this water area, we are still experiencing a headwind. We do switch to a tailwind very, very briefly here before we turn up again, and it's more headwind, more crosswind. Crosswind again on the top here, crosswind, 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 and that lasts pretty much until the major challenge is over, because once we turn for home, it is usually a tailwind or a cross tailwind from that point here. And so what you've noticed is from 0 to 42 miles, we have a lot of headwind and a lot of crosswind. This is why a lot of heavier athletes out here, bigger athletes, can still have success. We're at mile 42, right? And we have a long time of downhill and fast assist here from 42 to 56 on the way in. So our heavier athletes out on course, the bigger guys aren't met with such a huge penalty on courses like this. They can still kind of hang with the pack here, which is really, really cool to see. That is this is our speed. I'm going to eliminate that. This is our elevation that we just talked about, and this is our power right here. This athlete's going to hold about 300 watts. Normalized power is 304 here. Average is 296. Again, about 300 watts. And for those first couple of miles here, again, we are over our average power, believe it or not. I told you guys, get ready for that first couple of miles. You're going to need it. As we experience some of our first little challenges, you could see here that this athlete's power, it spikes to 360, right? And again, we are averaging about 300 watts, so that's a solid jump, right? So this work will need to start happening before the 5-mile mark if you're one of those athletes that just kind of eases into things. In your races, I would actively start preparing to kind of do the opposite during this race, to be ready from the get-go, because you do have some time to kind of cruise later on here. And as you experience your challenges, that's going to be a theme here that you do have to increase the power. The elevation grade is just too extreme to kind of just spin up for most people unless you got some extreme gears. Um, but after that, you're pretty much around your average target power here up until mile 20, 20-ish, and then that's when things start to go a little crazy here, and it gets very, very busy. So for the first kind of third of the course, the last third of the course, last quarter of the course, you are going to be able to kind of do more steady state stuff, more traditional interval type things. The middle of the course is going to be where a lot of the craziness happens for age groupers and things like that. For the pros, it's going to be a little bit different, but for the vast majority of people, this is going to be what your race is going to look like. Weather, again, here is our wind projection here. This is the distance over here, and you can see exactly what we talked about with those blue arrows. The wind right here. Temperature is going to steadily rise throughout the day. Usually it starts off a little chillier and then it gets a little bit hotter, but as is customary, right? Time analysis, this is a very, very interesting one. First off, we're going to start off with our weight. If you do drop about 1% of your weight, you're going to save about 12 seconds over this course here. Power, if you are going to go 1% faster here, you do net 40 seconds a little quicker over the course of the day. And you can see some very easy places to do that. No secret, you're going to find the steepest, shortest areas, and boom, you're saving you're saving some easy seconds here. 2 seconds with that 1% gain. Awesome stuff. Drag. This is a very interesting one. If you do decrease your drag just a little bit, right, you are going to save 25 seconds. So everyone that has been paying attention, if you increase your power by 1%, that's, let's call it 38 seconds, 40 seconds here. Our drag, if we increase it a little bit, you're getting 25 seconds. So put that where it is. Your rolling resistance, if you decrease that a little bit, you're saving 6 seconds. So if you decrease your rolling resistance, you decrease your drag, and this is just by 1%, and your power increases by 1% over target, you're already saving, let's call it, a minute and 10 seconds over this course. Wait, if you drop it by 1 second, you are not saving a huge amount of time. So that's why I said the larger athletes, the athletes who are a little more solid, can usually stay and hang with the group here. It's not just the smaller individuals that are running away with the show on Ironman Oceanside 73. Which is why most people really like it, because you do have a couple of surprise winners sometimes. You have all kinds of cool stuff. Um, That's the bike. This is where the aid stations were. I'll circle those really fast for you. This is where the aid stations were last year. I don't expect them to change any major spots for them. This is going to be about where they are. Morton's is still a sponsor, so I would expect them to be out there as well. But again, I will wait for the athlete guide to see what happens with that. Scrolling down to our run here, there is a slight change on the run as well. But before we get to that, make sure you do read the drafting rules, the new penalty rules. They are a little bit different this year, so make sure you are aware of that. This was our run from last year. Our turnaround spot was located right here. This year it's going to be a little bit different. Also different is the turnaround way at the bottom over there. So let's switch over to our run really fast so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Zooming back out, we still have the same starting spot, which is located right here in transition, obviously. Our finish line is still in the exact same place, but the turnaround is in a little different spot. So last year, our turnaround all the way at the bottom was located way up there. You can see that is no longer the case and is now right there. That is because of our, I can zoom out a little bit, pier section here. So this is our run from last year. And if we go back over here, this is what it's going to look like this year. So what they have marked over here, and I don't know if this is the official word, but what they have marked here is on the second loop, right? You're coming back up here, you go over, they have you just crossing straight over and then starting your second loop that way. I do not know if that's the official one or if they want you to go back out again and then back, because that does create a crossover here, and I'll show you right here. This is the crossover that I'm talking about. So when you do start this one, right? This is where you go out on the first time and then you start your first loop that way. The second loop, they have you crossing over here and then starting it that way. I don't know if that's going to be the case or if they want you to go out, but that would be a question for them. Just ask them or keep an eye out for the athlete guide. Sometimes things are a little bit different than what they are mapped out to be. And that is the reason for the turnaround also here. The last year, the turnaround spot for to start loop 2 was right here, and the if I could get it for you, and the turnaround on the far end has been moved. So that's what I'm seeing. Everything else is pretty much the same on race day. Just those two things have been switched. Course profile here. This is the profile here. This is the one from last year. And you can see I've zoomed in on a couple different sections so you can see exactly the kind of terrain that you're going to be running on. It's neighborhoods, it's running right along the water. It's exactly what you want it to be. If it's a great day, that can be really, really cool. If it's a nasty day out there, it can be a little rough. If there's a lot of wind out there, you are going to be feeling that big time, right? Not super uncommon for athletes to kind of experience some weather-related issues out here and their race get derailed. So make sure you're keeping up on nutrition. Make sure you're keeping up on hydration. If you're not, you're going to fall off, and this is very akin to like a Florida run, something like that. If it's a hot day, you're going to really, really feel it. With the breeze that's coming off of the water, you might not notice how much you're sweating, that kind of stuff, right? You're going to get sucked into a lot of games that people are playing. You're going to be, it's a really distracting race at times. It's just a lot to do, a lot to see, and a lot to take in all at the same time. So I would kind of explore this area in the days leading up to the race just to kind of take in some of the sights so you're not super distracted on race day. Make sure you are walking around and taking a look at some of the key areas like the ones that we just talked about on the pier right there. That would be a key area to note and to learn about what is specifically happening because the athlete guide is not out yet. And I would actually get back through some of these neighborhood areas and some of these sections here to see exactly what the terrain is. Like you're going to have a couple of blips in elevation. You're going to have some things that, like some small hills, but you're not going to have, like on this here, this is just a blip in GPS right there. They're using pretty much the same thing, right? You're not going to have these, it's 17% hill, right? That's just the blip in GPS. That's not totally accurate. So it's a little bit smoother out there than what it's portrayed to be. Um, and that's Ironman Oceanside. The run is going to be largely dictated by what happens on your bike. If you have a huge party out there on the bike, the run is going to be a little bit of a sufferfest for you. Keep in mind it is two loops, right? So everyone's going to be compact again. Everyone that was spread out on the bike is going to come together again, and it's going to be like the swim all over again. That can kind of play some mind tricks on people when they're used to some space on the bike, and then everything kind of comes back together on the run. That can be a little disheartening sometimes. Since you are you do have these straight lines, you are going to be able to see who's in front of you, who's in back of you very, very easily. If you are a front runner or someone like that, faster age grouper, you're going to be able to see who's around you at all times unless you're just put yourself in a box and you don't want to see. Other than that, guys, I would really, really prioritize nutrition. I know I've said it a couple times, but that is a huge, huge factor on race day. I would also take a serious check-in with yourself in the first mile or so and have an honest conversation about what happened on the bike and if that's setting you up for success or failure. If you've gone a little too hard, don't be afraid to back down some of those efforts and say, maybe I need to run 30 seconds slower per mile for the first couple of miles and just kind of get my legs back or see what happens. Because you can always try to get faster, right? If you start out really, really fast, there's usually only one thing that happens, and that's you get slower. And I would almost always rather choose the opposite. Only a couple of cases where I would do the other thing. And that's 2025 70.3 Oceanside. Can't wait to kick off the 2025 season this year. Again, if you have any coaching needs or want to talk about race strategy for you on this race, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you. And good luck to everyone racing on this 2025 edition. Good luck, everyone.